Welcome in, everybody. Another 5 minutes with Sean, maybe 10. We are going to be doing a mental health Monday on the show today. This comes from a very, very special conversation. Those of you who know or don't know, recently I finally left my home, my cozy office, to go back out into the wild around people and airports and traveling and hotels and conferences. And while all that is fine, the reason you go to conferences, in my opinion, is for the people, for the connection, for the understanding. Maybe you met someone online, maybe you didn't, maybe you've never actually even met them. You thought that you've seen them, and then you meet them in person, and that is today's guest, Michael Barich. Michael, how are you, man?
Excellent, brother. Happy to be here.
Man, we are so glad to have you. I really appreciate it. The rest of the story goes like this. I'm walking through the halls of Digital Dealer looking for my friend and Boston, Massachusetts own Dave Foy. And I see him. And as I see him, right at the same moment, I see someone I've seen online. I've seen a part of SDL. I've kind of, as Jim Ziegler would say, I peeked from afar. I checked it out from there. And in walks Michael, and in person, as I said to him in the pre-show, so it's nothing he hasn't heard, dude looks like he's straight out of Sons of Anarchy. Like, he comes up, he's large, he has presence. I'm not. I mean, I'm just a little Irish guy who kind of stands in the corner. So, I'm impending like that. I see him. I'm like, holy cow. I walk up to him and I ask him how he's doing, as you will in any social interaction. Even though I haven't been around people in a long time, I still knew that was how this worked. So I did it. And Michael proceeds to tell me that he's doing poorly in the moment, and new things that happened in his life. And so I'm going to go to you on the next part, Michael. Talk to me about how that happened from your end, because it stuck with me. The fact that you and I had that brief, we talked for another couple minutes thereafter. We had this brief interaction, but it was so full of soul. What a bad use of the words there, but it was just so powerful in that way. How did it approach from your end?
I think that Zoom has changed a lot of relationships. And so while you're right, we haven't met in person, I do feel like I knew you, right? So when you asked me in the moment, I was dealing with some personal stress. So right as I boarded the plane to come to the conference, I received a text message from a childhood friend of mine, and she and I, have known each other since childhood, but we're not like best friends. So it's not very often she reaches out to me, and so we chatted a little bit, kind of some small talk, and she's like, "Okay, well, if you're on the plane, I'll talk to you later." And it turns out that that's the last time I'll ever talk to her. She committed suicide either later that day or the following day. And I was really just devastated when I found out, which was the beginning of the conference and the day we met. So I felt when you asked me, it was just the right time for me to kind of bare my soul. And I really appreciate you for that.
Man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you for being able to do it. Like I said, when you think about people and you think about stereotypes, and I hate to say this, okay, stereotypes exist for a reason. I don't care what part of life you're in, they exist for a reason, because somewhere, somehow, someone lives up to them and you see it every day. So when I see a guy your size in fixed operations, the last thing I'm thinking when I meet you is, this dude's about to bare his soul to me. This dude's about to tell me about how he feels, about what makes him, up at night, hold the blanket tight. And you did it, man. And it gave me sort of a positive burst on humanity for this moment of look at this, dude, two people who have never met are having this. And it wasn't like I said, we were in a conference. We weren't in a hallway. We weren't it was just, and it wasn't that long, and it stuck with me the rest of the show. So let me ask you, dude, when you think about mental health and you think about the overarching discussion, how long have you been on the bandwagon of mental health? And I say that again, you've been in the industry of the car business a long time. This is not a topic we started talking about maybe the last 3 to 5 years. You've been doing it a lot longer than that. So talk me through where you sort of became this more evolved version of yourself and ready to delve into that world?
Well, it was January of 2022, and I had a stroke. So I had a blood clot lodge in the right side of my brain. I had just come home from work. It was a Saturday, and I was sitting on my back deck. I collapsed. When I did and actually hit the deck, my male bull mastiff went nuts inside the house. And so it forced my wife to come outside and be like, hey, what are you doing? And of course, as a male, maybe an alpha male, even in that moment, I didn't want to ask for help. So of course I told her, oh, nothing, I'm fine, but I was paralyzed. So I couldn't get up. And she could tell because the left side of my face was paralyzed. And so thankfully she called the paramedics. EMTs got here. They administered a drug when I got to the first hospital. And then they transferred me to another hospital to have a neurosurgeon go in to see what she could do. And, thankfully I'm here, I've recovered. But when you have that type of trauma that happens, in your cerebral cortex, there's some cognitive challenges. And so what I tell people and what I told my wife, it took me a couple of weeks to figure it out. I'm not the same guy anymore. And so what I mean by that, most people wouldn't know unless I told them, but I think you're old enough to remember getting to the internet by a dial-up modem, and today we have high-speed access, right? They both get you to the same platform. One just takes a little longer. So yeah. I feel like I'm going through that dial-up modem, and it's just taking me a little longer sometimes to think or respond, and it's humbling, but I paid a lot of attention to my recovery from that stroke. And I think that's why when you asked me, it was an immediate yes, like mental health is an issue. I mean, think about what you said, and you actually had a post on LinkedIn about it. Like you came out of the cave after 10 years and into the wilderness, and all these people going around at an airport, and, there's a lot of madness happening. And I'm grateful that you did. Yeah. First and foremost, I'm glad we had the opportunity to shake hands and hug it out, brother.
Yeah, me too, man. It's funny you talk about the dial-up modem. It's part of the game I play with my friends. Is how do you know you're not a millennial? You had dial-up modems, as that's how you got around your schoolwork. So anyone ever tells me I'm a millennial, I'm like, nah, the typewriters and dial-up internet, like AOL. Come talk to me then. All right.
That's right.
That's how it rolls. But no, dude, seriously. So this is January of 22. You have a life-altering scenario. You are now back at the beginning. But when we, like you said, you're back to the dial-up version. But when we talked, you and I, we were fortunate to share a meal, share some time hanging out, kind of walking between the places and chatting. You had shared with me that this idea that it was dial-up in one way, right? Getting back some of the cognitive stuff. But you felt you went into like some fiber being of internet just on the humanality side, on the way you were thinking of things, your outview of life, kind of your new approach, giving up the idea of being in the position you were in to now being the owner of your own business. How has that genesis been for you as a person, knowing that cognitively things have slowed down, but on the other side, you are hyper-focused and just completely high-speed internet on the, changing your life side of things?
Well, I think it's just evolution, right? So the person that had probably the biggest and most profound impact on me changing my course of direction was the neurosurgeon that went in to remove that blood clot. She came down and saw me in the ICU, and she's like, Michael, dude, you are so lucky. And at the end of the day, we chatted about it, and she thought, this is my second life-changing event. So I had a heart attack 8 years ago on Easter Sunday at church. I stood up for worship, and so I survived two of those near-death experiences. And at the end of the day, what she said to me before she left the ICU was like, if your health is important to you, run away from what's causing you to be here. And she thought it had a lot to do with stress. And of course, I disagreed because I'm Michael Barich, right? Yeah. So I deal with stress better than everybody else. And, I have my shield up and my cape and all that shit, but sure, I listened to what she said. So I laid there for 4 days, and no one's ever told me that before. She's like, run the F away.
Yeah,
And
run the F away from the stress. And it's funny, you think that you're great at dealing with it, right? Like you think it's impenetrable, yet here you are with two life-changing experiences. And you're like, look, and I say this, and I said this to you as well. I haven't shared a lot of the details with people, but you and I got into it. My wife had a life-altering scenario happen last summer as well. And it changes, for me being her husband, it changes prospectively how I look at things, but it changed things for her. It changed how she went through her life, how she looked at things. And she had to go through the same things you did, relearning some memory things, all these sort of little items that were definitely fixable, but frustrating for her and difficult for us to, have to sort of go through together. But the fundamental change, the way she looked at things this was a message. This was my body telling me that I've been putting too much on it. I've been expecting too much of it. So you decide. So let me just get this straight. So you decide you're going to leave. I think there's only like 2 industries in the world that you could leave for being an entrepreneur that would somehow be less stressful than the job you had. And working at a car dealership for as long as you have, especially in fixed operations, is one of those jobs. So you went from the high level stress of being in a dealership, being a part of that life, to now being on your own. What has that done for your mental health?
Well, I think it's really been extremely humbling, because I have had a tremendous amount of success in the automotive industry. But while I might have been a good or great fixed ops director, I'm not a great small business owner yet. So it's kind of like starting all over, but the principles are the same for me as a fixed ops trainer, teacher, and coach. It was the same thing I did inside the dealership for the last 30 years.
So the easy part of the transition there, but your curve now is on the business side, the small business side of it.
That's correct. And just truth be told, when you talked about having to relearn, I primarily focused the majority of the remainder of 2022. So I left the dealership in April in 2022, and I spent the majority of that year working on me personally. So physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, like all of those things, I had to go back to like just the beginning, man. And so it's humbling. I'm 54 years old, bro.
Yeah, I know, bro. That's what I'm talking about. Like, people, if you don't already get the point of today's show, like, the dude is like almost 55 years old. He's had 2 life-changing events. He was a technician forever. Doctors told him to run away. He's now doing it, and he's open to talking about it. Like, it's, to me, somewhat, I'm 40, what are we, 42? So I learned this. My wife pretty much gave me this conclusion 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I was running stores and working 80 hours. I don't have to tell you, and smoking a million cigarettes, drinking gallons of booze. And I mean, I'm an aholic, Mike. Okay. And you can apply anything to it. It could be work, it could be gambling, drugs. It doesn't matter. I am an aholic. I'm into things at excess. It's how I live. Some of it's good, some of it's not good. But the reality is that's how I am. And I haven't had my wife, that stoplight came up for me when I was really, 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 really young. Okay. Really young. And it was a moment in time that I'll never forget. And I think if people knew about me that, that I didn't, at one point in my life, I didn't think my life was worth living. People who know me now would say that's absurd. You've never thought that in your life. It did. It happened. But it didn't happen, so it didn't matter now. But it's still one of those things that I'm willing to talk about now to make sure that kids younger than me know that it's all right. That even though you might feel like there's nothing else to give, there is. And so when I hear your story of suicide, Michael, I think to myself, how can we do better? What do you think we could do more for people? Or is it just as simple as this, or picking up a phone? Like, how do you view trying to help support people in that situation?
Man, if it's okay with you, Sean, I'd just like to give everybody and anybody my phone number, that if you need to talk, there's people there to help and listen. And so if you don't mind, I'm going to share it. It's area code 708-744-5425. And I think that in the event you're in that situation, and I've had some dark days over the course of the last year, but I had the grit, I had the determination, I had the physical discipline to try to carry on. But I got to tell you, there's some days where there was some heavy baggage, man. And I think I had a good support system around me, even though most of my friends are not neighbors, because I'm originally from western suburbs of Chicago. I still have so many nice people and great people in my network that if I need something, it's a phone call away, and I'm thankful and grateful and blessed for it.
Yeah, the network is the part of it, right? And I think that people need to understand that there someone else is going through it, and you don't know. Again, meeting you don't know people's shit, right? When you walk up to them, you meet them, you see what they're going through, whatever. You don't actually know what they're dealing with. So before you freak out on someone about like, hey, you shouldn't have acted that way, or hey, I didn't do. Hold on, let's take a step back. Let's ask people what they dealt with. Typically, people are acting out, because they're dealing with something else. As you get into small business, Mike, for yourself with mental health, how are you balancing the time of being in business, having to do the work thing, but also focusing on Mike, something you probably didn't get the chance to do in retail? How do you balance a day like that for yourself now?
Well, it has to start with me first, because if I don't take care of me, then there is no business, there is no future. There is no there's no light at the end of the tunnel. So it's about me. I try to exercise some daily disciplines. I exercise, I read. I'm working on gratitude and appreciation every day. And I think, truth be told, I've taken a lot of things for granted in my life. And I've been very fortunate. So, it's just relearning at 50 something years old. And I don't think, I'm a forever student. So it's not like I quit learning along the way, but having to start over has been humbling. And, at the end of the day, no one's coming to save me. So I think as it relates to mental health, this is really an appropriate conversation, because the people that are struggling, there's other people out there that want to help, and no one's coming to save you. So you have to take that advice and understand that if you're struggling, that you have a network of people around you. If you don't, call me.
If you're networkless, the guy is giving you his cell phone number. It's good. We'll see it everywhere. I'm telling you, this is the kind of thing you want to hear from people. And you're right, man. You talk about the gratitude and appreciation, taking things for granted. And again, that's something, I didn't deal with what my wife dealt with from her perspective. I dealt with it from mine. And that was one of the things I said to myself was, man, her and I have been hanging out together 20 years. And, there was a moment in time where I didn't know if that was ever going to happen again. And I don't think anything has scared you straighter, faster in my life than that singular thought of trying to figure out how I would spend my days. What would be the point of any of this if this wasn't the person next to me? But in reality, the conversations her and I have always had is that even if anything ever does happen, it's always going to be about the us, no matter what, right? So if something happens to the other person, you go forward for that other person, for that whole thing. But Michael, I'm sure like you and your wife, and maybe not, I don't know, but my wife and I had the deepest of conversations, the darkest of conversations when these things came up. Did you guys experience anything like that as a couple and going through that and being together through this kind of stuff?
Not to that extreme, but I think you bring up a really great point that you had deep and dark conversations. So, if anybody tells me they don't have dark thoughts or they don't have dark moments, they're full of shit. Everybody has those thoughts, and I think it's okay to talk about it. It doesn't make me better. It doesn't make me worse. I think it levels the playing field to say, hey, we all struggle with that, whether it's something you're constantly thinking about or random thoughts, right? So I don't know too many perfect people in the world. Matter of fact, I know none. So we all have a past that has some bearing or weight on that dark space that I believe exists in everybody. So I mean, we have to do a better job loving each other. We have to do a better job supporting each other. We have to do a better job of attaboys, high fives, hugs, all that shit. And I think as a fixed ops director in the dealership, it's stuff I did all the time. And so I started my days with hugs of all my service advisors, carried into the parts department. I'd walk out inside the service department and those guys are dirty. So I didn't give them a lot of hug time, but I would have.
That's awesome. No, I started my same day coming up, being more in the executive roles in dealerships. When I was younger, I'd walk from the back, I'd park in the back of the dealership and I'd walk from the back to the front. And I would make sure that I had a conversation with everyone in the dealership to say, hey, find out what people identified with, right? One guy loved golf, another guy loves NASCAR, the younger guy loves basketball, right? Just double check any of those results I could have, before I went to work. So you had some common ground. So you could start everyone off knowing that they were a part of something else, right? So a part of something bigger. I was not the hugger. I mean, I'm a hugger, but I was not. No, I did not go around my dealership doing that. But again, the fact that you were, dude, is just, it warms my heart. Like everything you talk about as a fixed ops guy. Look, I don't know what fixed ops guys, we should all have a bunch of guys together and talk about this. I don't know what fixed ops guys think of sales guys, but I know sales guys, we're just kind of like, ultimately we're afraid, I think, to go to the shop, to talk to the shop, to be around the shop. Do you know what I mean? Like I drove shuttle, Michael. That's how I started to get to know a new area when I moved there. And it's how I heard what customers' problems were with the dealership. And it was a great place to learn something to drive shuttle. So I used to come in at like 7:30 in the morning and drive shuttle before my shift. But when you did it, you were with the service guys. And I think that ingrained me to them. So they were always cool with me because I was willing to do that sort of thing, go get a car from detail, work with people to get stuff out of the shop. But I get the feeling that not all fixed ops guys love all front end guys. Is that fair?
Well, I think it's accurate. But I also think that it's criminal. And part of that segregation or silos that are created inside the dealership is the fact that we speak different languages. The variable side speaks a little differently than the fixed ops people. And that's propagated from the dealer principle down. Yeah. Because the same way that you're mentioning that relationship, I don't think a lot of dealers have that same comfortability level that I do, right? So it's more like yours where who are those guys in the back? And yeah, they are dirty. So,
yeah, exactly. Like they are. And I see them on the sheet. Like I know, I get the money part. Like no one has to explain it to me. Like I get that portion, but it also seems like something, you're right, the silo created by the top down. That's an interesting part because I think it's all one customer. I think you and I talked about this when we were.
I think it's all one team, Sean.
Yeah, it's all one team, all one customer. We all work at the pleasure of the customer. Period. And I remember we used to mandate. Well, it was a Nissan mandate, but still, we made sure we followed through with it with the scheduling your first appointment, your first oil change when you bought a car. And even after the shop was closed, we'd walk downstairs. We had a whole calendar, and it worked this whole process, and it got them engaged. To be like, cool. So in 3 months from now, put it in your calendar. I'll put it in mine. And then they got their reminders and they were like seamlessly transitioned to the other part of the team. That seemed like a winning strategy, but I've only seen that like a handful of times. Is it more in your experience, Michael? Is it more of a silo than it is a team in most places?
I think the silos divide the team. And right. If it was more about, just one team and there's 4 walls and not 4 departments, I think that the dealership culture would be so much different. But unfortunately, everybody has an opinion, and then there's judgment that's cast like, oh, well, he's just a service manager. Oh, he's just a fixed ops dude. I'm a salesman. I sell 25 cars a month. I walk on water. But they all bring in revenue, and jointly that's pretty similar, right? Like salesmen and advisors are pretty fairly comp. Mechanics
and F&I or manager directors are fairly calm. GMs and fixed ops guys, at least it should be. Maybe I'm living Pollyanna there, but it should be where I've never understood the divide where it was just like, guys, my service advisors are my best friends because they're going to come to me on the floor because all you guys are standoffish or you're trying to get them to do shit they don't want to do. If you make friends, then when they have a problem, they need you, they're going to come to you. And I got so many car deals from just being friends with service advisors.
Yeah, it's a win-win in the business, but I think it comes down to vision and culture, and the leaders set that. So I think that's why I've had a lot of success in my career, because I might be a fixed ops director, but I'm running that business as if it's my own and talking, coaching, teaching, and training my people the exact same way. But I think that there's two key performance indicators that need to be universal language inside the dealer. And the first one is service retention. So what's in the equation? Everything that happens on a financial statement, at least on the balance sheet, is mathematical equation, right?
Yep.
So when you look at retention, you've got a numerator and you've got a denominator. So if the customer comes in for service, they click the numerator, they click the denominator. But then if they don't come back in for a certain period of time and have their vehicles serviced, then they stay in the denominator, which is really an opportunity for the sales team and the service team. But but nobody on the sales side knows that. Nobody has any idea or talks about what that metric looks like, right? But we need to break this down. We need to make this universal speak. We need to make this universal language for everybody in the dealership. And the flip side of that is sales market share. So what does that metric look like? And does everybody in the dealership know it, include the fixed ops team, right? Because they might have friends. Well, hopefully they have friends, but they probably have family. They certainly have neighbors that live, my guess would be, within proximity or PMA to the dealership that it would count if they clicked the sale. But do we ever go home as a technician or as a fixed ops director or as a porter or a service or a parts guy, doesn't matter, a detail guy, and be like, man, you should really drive this product. Not only because it's great, reliable, but it would help our dealership and blah, 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 right? And then just think about the relationships that were formed. If one of the sales associates brought in, you mentioned Nissan, so brought in his neighbor's 2017 Maxima with 60,000 miles on it that needed a 60,000 mile service and some brakes. Like, the advisor would be like, yeah, I'm your guy. Kind of like you did. But the same thing happens from the service team to the sales team. We need a balance. We need to balance the playing field. We need to level the playing field, because there's too many damn good people in our business that we have been pitted against each other in the industry for a long time. Like, we're a team, man. And I think that's where our bond came from, Sean. Like, you're in the industry, you're a respected dude, you've done some great things. And I think that's why we had the ability to create a strong bond from day one that we met, because you're like family to me. You're like in the trenches with me for a long, long time. And so I think when we start looking at each other as brother and sister instead of competition or hiding truths from people, like, let's just be honest, let's just be real, let's win, most importantly.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think you're right. I mean, look, I tell people all the time, my company has a cap to it, right? Only a number of dealers I want to work with. That's about 1.5% of the available dealers in the country. Okay. That's where my cap is. So the other 99 are for someone else to do someone else, right? So when people come up and they're like, hey, Sean, did you know so-and-so is trying to do the same thing you're doing and copy your business model and do all this? I kind of laugh, because it's like, well, no shit, dude. Like, we've been doing this for 10 years. We created our own market. If you ever heard the word vendor management, that's my word. I put that word into existence 10 fucking years ago. There's no debate about it. That's enough for me to sleep at night, man. I'm cool. I don't need anything else. I don't need to worry about someone else. No one's going to take my market share. There's too much. This is not a car dealership. There isn't another one of me 6 miles away. That's not right. It's not this. So let's work together. And that's, but Michael, can I say this too? Because I think it's along mental health as well. This conversation came up in Tampa. about people, right? We're all in one industry. We should all work together. Only reason I call bullshit is because there are people in this industry that suck at what they do and they're terrible people. I don't want to have to work with everyone just because they're here, Michael. Is that fair or am I being unreasonable?
No, I think it's not only fair, but accurate. So, you mentioned the other 99% of the dealers. Those people don't work for me and never have, at least for any length of time. Like the cancer gets cut out. If they're not buying into my culture and my vision, then those people just don't work for me, period. So as I move forward in my career and into that vendor space, I have to potentially deal with a little bit more of that. And quite honestly, I've seen it over the last year. I walked into a Volkswagen store here in town where I live. And, you mentioned I'm a fairly good sized dude. I command a little bit of a presence. I walked right through the service drive, right past every advisor, right past the service manager's office into the showroom where they had maybe 6 offices. 4 of those offices were filled with people and they were all on their phone doing this. Nobody said hello to me. Dude, it's 2023. How is that possible?
That's how it's possible, dude. That's how it's possible. Look, you grew up in the Chicago car business. So did I. All right. I worked for Gary Grossinger. All right. Yeah. 1999. Dude, you would have been sent home if that dude made it from his car to the front step without 3 people standing out there, one of them finishing a cigarette and 2 others trying to beat the other one to the door. Then you'd have been sent home for the day. So I do not understand how anyone, but it happens everywhere, Michael. It happens at the Home Depot, where I think, by the way, Home Depot, I think you have way too many employees. I don't know what to tell you. You got a lot of people standing around doing nothing or sweeping. And I think you can get robots for shit like that. So I'm sorry, I don't normally advocate for this, but if your people are just going to stand and look at me like I'm the asshole trying to figure out how to shop and spend money with you, I'm good. I'll just stay online. All right. So, but I think we're dealing with a time and place where, the numbers show it, right, Michael? We're overemployed as a country. We are overemployed. We have too many people working. Unemployment is too low of a rate for people that it spikes inflation numbers, which means too many people have jobs, which means they're not really trying to fight for them. Look at the sales guys. They had no idea who you were. You walked through a whole showroom where you were probably the 3rd person to do it that day, and no one said shit to you.
Well, think about what you just said. It was 1999, and think about what's happened in our world since 1999 today. That's a lifetime ago. A lifetime. Gary could do that, or Caroline could do that, Grossinger. Yeah. And they may have a colorful conversation with you about it, but yes, subsequently to that, we put everybody with participation trophies, and you can just show up. So it's a byproduct of those generational changes. Like, people come to fucking work and just hang out in the dealership because their mom told them it was okay. Their dads told them it was okay. Show up to batting practice and try to hit the ball. And it's okay, Johnny, if you don't. No, you got to put the wood to it.
I'm sorry. I can't agree more. I hold from laughing too hard, because this is my point, is that I don't have a problem with being more aware, right? You are a 50-plus-year-old man. I am a 40-plus-year-old man, and we'll be on the internet having a live discussion about our feelings. So I have evolved enough. I don't need someone telling me I have more evolution to do, or I need to be respectful of anyone else. I've already done it. However, those who have not, it isn't like you have a reason. It's just because you're either scared or you're afraid of what will come. And you and I talked about this in the pre-show. That's where we kind of differentiate ourselves from others. It's not that we don't care. It's that we won't care about how your reaction affects what it is that we say, how we say it, because we try to do it respectfully. I think that's fair. I think we try to do it with as much fact as possible. That's how I appreciate arguments, is fact-based. I'm not a big arguing with your feelings. That shit ain't fair, because how somebody feels is not something that it can't be questioned. It can be questioned, but you can't tell someone they don't feel a certain way. That's correct. That's not fair, right? So when you have, let me ask you this, when you were, we'll wrap this up. When you were running your store, Fixed Ops Guy, how often did you check in on your people, the mental health aspect of this world, looking back, retrospectively as you can now? How often was that a part of what you did as a director?
Hindsight being 2020, Sean, I probably could have done it better. I was the type of leader that, I came in every day. I was present. I never got to work and put my feet up on my desk and be like, man, I've had a great career. We'll just kind of put it on autopilot. Like, I came to work every day and I expected my team to. So I think I could have done better with that aspect, but I checked in with people, every day. And, I was a big fan of having like huddle meetings. I was a big fan of having technician meetings. And those meetings weren't to talk about bullshit. It was to talk about things that we were challenged with previously, so everybody can learn and grow together and we don't duplicate the same mistakes over and over again. No one wants to come to work and get their teeth kicked in. Everybody likes to win. I don't know anybody that likes to lose.
Well, I know people who like to participate. We were just talking about this, so there is somewhere in there. But yes, I'm with you. I was just saying this to my wife. You were like, "Oh, we're just doing this for fun." I'm a bowler. I'm a league bowler. And she's like, "Well, let's just go bowling for fun." I'm like, I don't understand. Like, I don't get what you're saying. She's like, "Well, let's just go and not care about the score." And I'm like, "I'm sorry. I'm hearing you. I'm getting you. But you want me to just show up to the bowling alley and just sort of, go about it and throw it?" And she's like, "Well, no, just try not to get frustrated if you miss a shot." And I'm like, "No, I'm just like, I can already tell you that I'm going to be fun. If I leave a 10 pin and I miss, I'm going to be upset." So anyways, Michael, let me ask you, let's wrap it up with this. When you think mental health, you think the overarching discussion of it from your perspective. Now, this is, again, you're a man in his 50s running his own business. What advice do you have for people in your age range, or let's just say between yours and mine, who aren't comfortable putting it out there? And I'm not saying they got to meet a stranger, well, an internet stranger, which sounds even worse than I don't know. Let's not go with internet stranger, but it meet someone you've never actually met. I'm not asking people to bare their soul, but what advice would you give to people in our age range to sort of start to crack that shell and be more talking about how they're feeling?
Well, I think that the struggle is real for a lot of people that I think, quite honestly, I was masked from seeing, maybe because it took a life-changing event to open my eyes to that at a different perspective with a different lens. But I think there's a lot of people that are struggling today. And, look at what's transpired with COVID and you even getting out of the cave, right? There's some people that don't leave their house for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 7, 8 days, right? Because they work from home. They might go from the bed to the office, possibly a shower or 2 in that time frame, man, go to the refrigerator. Like, there's people that are struggling. That is a byproduct of what we've pivoted and done. But I just think that, man, there's so many people out there that just aren't comfortable talking about their problems. And I think what we need to do a better job communicating to people is that, hey, man, I'm not perfect. I'm not going to sit here and pretend in front of you that I'm perfect. Like, dude, I have struggles just like everybody else does. And we need to be open to talk about that. And then you need to be open to hear about it. Yeah,
the perfection thing is something that I've tried to put that out to my wife, to my own therapist, that it's probably my biggest downfall as a human is my level of expectation. And I'm not even, it's not like I come from that. I don't really know. I don't know if it's because of a work ethic. I don't know. I don't know why I have it, but it exists in me. And it's something I'm trying really hard to stop expecting, especially from others. That I think is more important than what I need to like of myself, because that's my own shit. Like, I should deal with that. But like putting it on other people, is putting my shit on other people in that way. That stuff's got to stop. Like, that is not fair to expect people to live up to some, I'm not even sure, like some unrealistic expectation that they didn't even know existed, that I was like, well, this is the only way I do business. So if it's not, which is so false, because like you said, I don't know any perfect people. I don't know that. And I want to say this. You talked a word about humbling. You said it a couple times because it gets the extra circles on my list here. I think we as people need just slightly more of that. I think it's good that people be humble for whatever reason. I hope it's never to your extent. That's the worst possible outcome. But the fact that you learn, the fact that you know something is different, to know that you're going to proceed differently than you were previous, I think is amazing, man. So thank you for all that you're doing right now in the industry. Thank you for being the person that you are. And thanks for that moment at Digital Dealer. I've said it publicly. I've said it on my post. By far the most probably amazing moment I've experienced of attending conferences in my life. And it was less than 5 minutes and had absolutely zero to do with work. So I couldn't have been happier. So thank you again for that.
Sean, my pleasure, man. Thanks. Thank you for you. I appreciate you. And I think that the last word I might leave our listeners with is, in addition to being humble, you have to be approachable. And you were approachable to me at Digital Dealer. And I think that's why we've gone down the path that we have at this point. So I love you, brother. I appreciate you, man.
I love it, man. I appreciate it too. And I don't know if maybe it was the camel pack that people thought I was just hiking through. They thought they could stop and talk to me. But I'm glad that we had it, dude. Thank you so much. Thanks for all that you're doing. Everybody, thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate it. This is Mental Health Monday. May is the month of mental health. Now, that's silly to me. This is a 365 bit for me, so it is not for a month, but I figured it would more appropriate to have on Mr. Michael Barich to celebrate May's mental health. So go out, call someone you haven't called in a while, continue the conversations, and join me again next week. We're going to have some fun talking about all kinds of shit. So we'll see you next week. Thanks a lot.
Peace.